So that's the setting in the sense of West Kensington and what was going on in West Kensington. Now, east of Frankfurt Ave, they said there wasn't a Catholic to be seen. You know, there were no Catholics in East Kensington. Today's Fishtown would be East Kensington. East Kensington was very much, it was an old area, founded in the 1730s. A lot of guys served in the Revolution. They raised several companies of men in the Revolution. A lot of the folks that were living in the 1830s and 40s were maybe sons of sons of the 76ers. Is that a question? Oh, sorry. And he's just moving his arm. But so it was a very American neighborhood, you know. You had immigrants in there, but they were the right kind of immigrants, you know. They were the kind of immigrants, the Germans or English, fellow Englishmen or Irish Protestants. So in 1837, you had a bad economic downturn, the Panic of 1837. And it lingered for a number of years, similar to today perhaps. So in 1837, you had the first Nativist party organization was founded here in Philadelphia, in Germantown. But I guess the country wasn't ready for it yet because it didn't last very long. It sort of fizzled out. They claimed to be Whigs, you know, the big parties were Democrats and Whigs. But one newspaper article I found said they weren't Whigs, they were Van Buren men, which were Democrats. Which is funny to be Van Buren men because Van Buren was the first American-born president. The other ones were, previous to Van Buren, they were British subjects, right? But Van Buren grew up speaking Dutch, you know. He was, so for the nativists to be Van Buren men was kind of odd. And they were so anti-immigrant. So anyway, in 1843, the Nativist Party starts back up. And it starts in New York and soon comes to Philadelphia. And the Nativist Party, also called the American Republican Party, or simply the Nativists, their big issues were against the immigrants. And at this time, the big immigrant was the Irish Catholic. And the Nativists tended to be all, well, I'm assuming they were all Protestants. They seem to be very anti-Catholic. And so the Nativist big thing was that at that time you had to be 21 years old to vote. And they thought, and somewhere around the late 1830s was the first time Philadelphia got a chance to vote for their own mayor. Before that, council appointed the mayor. In 1838, Harrisburg stated that the King James Bible was the official curriculum of the public schools. It was a very Protestant-dominated society at this time. And so the Nativist Party thought, well, these Irish Catholics are coming and they're getting involved in politics and it's sort of like frightening them for some reason. For some reason, they thought it was like the long arm of the Pope was coming into America and fiddling with the Americans. And so they thought that the Irish were so backwards that it's going to take them 21 years to understand what democracy and republicanism was all about. So they should have to be citizens, since it's 21 years old to vote, they should have to be American citizens for 21 years before they could vote. So if you come here at 21, you have to wait till you're 42 to vote. You know, that's what they wanted. And then they also thought no immigrant could hold public office at any level, not just the presidency, but at any level, from the little ward to all the way up to the president. And so they were the two big issues on immigrants that they were against, and then there was the religion thing as well. So the Nativist Party would never come to West Kensington. That was, at that time it was called the Third Ward. And because the Irish had said, if you try to have a meeting in our neighborhood, we will burn the building down. We will make sure no two stones are set against each other, you know, if you have a meeting in our neighborhood. So they never had a meeting in Kensington. It's Third Ward. It's the only ward in Philadelphia County where they couldn't meet because the Irish threatened them. So they felt that was like a big affront, you know, like they were threatening their freedom of speech, they were threatening their freedom of assembly, which they were. But the stuff they wanted to speak about and assemble about was like sort of, you know, anti-Catholic, anti-Irish Catholic. And it's sort of like the Ku Klux Klan wanted to come to middle of North Philadelphia and have a rally here. It would be trouble, you know. Not a wise choice to have your rally there. You're allowed, you know, Constance said you're allowed, but not a wise choice. So one of the big native speakers on that day is this fellow right here. Louis Levin. Louis Levin was actually born Jewish. He's from South Carolina, and he converted to Christianity. He became a lawyer, and it's said that he was down in Mississippi and got involved in a duel. And his second in the duel was Jefferson Davis. Now, how he got to meet Jefferson Davis, I'm not sure, but that's what they say. So Louis Levin came back north, or came north, got involved in the temperance movement. Big temperance speaker, anti-liquor. And then he sort of grew into the Nativist movement and became a big anti-Catholic. Louis Levin was a big speaker, and other people like Colonel Peter Scan Smith, and whose father was partners with Jacob Astor, the fur trader, and early investor in Florida and stuff like that. So these guys would not come to Kensington's Second Ward to speak, because they said, if we're going to speak to the nativists of the Third Ward, we want to speak in the Third Ward. We're not going to speak in the Second Ward. That's not the way it works. So the nativists of the Third Ward could not get the big speaker to come up to speak. So they decided, okay, we're going to have a talk in the Third Ward. So while this sort of political thing is going on, this is the Reverend Inskip at Old Brick Church, which is a Methodist Episcopal church in Kensington, Marlborough, and Richmond, and Fishtown. I just had this picture there. He gave a big speech at a march of 1844, a couple months before the riots, which was a big anti-Catholic speech. And he was a radical nativist as well. So the Nativist Party was founded in 1843, and at the same time, the American Protestant Association was founded. That's about 99, so 100 ministers in Philadelphia of all Protestant denominations, predominantly Presbyterian, perhaps 25-30% were Presbyterians. And they founded the American Protestant Association as an association that was going to teach its congregations about the Roman Catholic Church and the dangers of the Roman Catholic Church. They started a journal, which is basically an anti-Catholic journal, anti-popery stuff, and it lasted just a couple of issues. And so they, every Sunday, they're at the pulpit, whacking the Catholics, And then in the bars and in the political hall, the Nativist Republican Party is, lamb-blasting the Catholic. So it was really stirring folks up, Yeah.
This illustration, where did you get this illustration? It's a very nice illustration.
Oh, that's from a contemporary book published right after the riots by a guy named John Perry, a Nativist printer.
And the other question, it'd be nice to know who's on the left and who's on the right, because it looks like the guys on the left are advancing, and the guys on the right are being pushed back a bit.
Well, it looks like that, but in real life, these guys on the left are the Protestants. Under Colonel Peter Albright, who was a militiaman and organized the troops. I was going to get to that later, but says yes, and these are the Irish Catholics. But in real life, these guys got wiped out because the Irish were undercover. These guys were in the open, shooting like army men, at the time in the open. Whereas these guys were more like guerrilla war fighters, hiding behind buildings and stuff. But I'll get to that in a little bit. I just wanted to talk about the Bible riots. So you had the American Protestant Association, and there was a big guy up there named Ben Moore, not Fred. I don't know if he's any relation, but don't say that. And he was on a school board locally, and he heard this story that the Bible, that Hugh Clark, the alderman, told him to stop reading the Bible at the Master Street School. Now, Master Street School is right in the heart of the Irish neighborhood, but the Irish in West Kensington probably made up, it's probably the majority, but not by a lot, maybe 50-something% versus 40-something%. And so it was a big percentage, bigger than anywhere else in East Kensington. East Kensington was zero Catholic. So Hugh goes over to the, at this time, remember, the King James Bible is standard reading material. It's part of the curriculum by law. And they would normally start the day with a Bible reading or something, and then you maybe have a little religion later on in the day or whatnot. And that was fine before there wasn't hardly any Catholics, but when you started having a lot of Catholics in the school, the bishop started to object to it. And Kendrick, and up in New York, Bishop Hughes. Bishop Hughes was much more militant. He told the nativists, if you attack our churches, we will kill you. He literally just told them, we're armed and we will go after you. In Philadelphia, Bishop Kendrick was a little more mild-mannered and tried to just go through the red tape of talking to the school board, talking to the governor, talking to the local politicos and stuff like that. And he wrote a letter to the school board asking them, can the Catholics be excused from reading the King James Bible? Or can we read our own Bible at this time, the Douay Rheims Bible, Douay Rheims Chaffon Bible? And they said, no, you cannot, because the Catholic Bible, the Douay Bible, has notes and commentary. And they were afraid, I guess, that the notes and commentary might give kids insight to Catholic thinking or something like this, right? So they said, you can read any Bible, you can read your own Bible, but you cannot read a Bible with notes and commentary, which pretty much eliminated the Catholic Bible that was used all over. So that was one of the big fights that was going on in the school, the Bible riots, they call the Bible riots. And then on the streets, the nativists, going around doing their stuff, and at the pulpit, the ministers are doing their thing. The whole thing just getting really agitated. And in March of '44, the Reverend Inskip has his big rally at Kensington's City Hall, or like a Commissioner's Hall at Frankfurt and Master. Several thousand people showed out in March of 1844. So when Clark goes over to the Master Street School, he tells the principal, Louisa Bedford, the principal of the girls' school, that, it's probably not a good idea, because she's saying, she was saying, like, well, it's kind of disruptive. I've been letting the Catholic kids leave the room when we read the King James Bible, but it's very disruptive to the class. And they're not allowed to bring their Bible in. So Clark said, well, if you want, and this is going on in the courts, there was a court thing over it. And so he said, why don't you just stop the Bible reading for now until the courts figure it out? And but ultimately, it's your choice. You're the principal, you make the decision. Well, she decided to stop it. She agreed with him. Okay, I agree with you. Well, the word on the street, though, was that Councilman Clark stopped the Bible reading, And they actually went as far as, like, he threw the Bible out the window, Like, the rumor mill started really churning, So this, resulted in that big rally in March of 1844. And so everybody's agitated, and finally they decide to have the meeting in Kensington, but because of the fact that they couldn't meet in anybody's house, they wanted to meet at John Gee's house, who lived on this block, more or less directly across from St. Michael's Church. So they wanted to have their natives meeting right directly across the street from the Catholic Church. And they told Gee they're going to burn his house down if he doesn't. So he backed out. So they decided to have it down the street on this empty lot on the southwest corner of 2nd and Master. Right next to the Master Street School, where this Clark and Louisa Bedford had it out about the Bible. There's an empty lot there. On May 3rd, 1844, they erect a stage against the school building, and they have their speakers come, and a couple hundred people showed up. It wasn't real big compared to the later one. And as soon as they started speaking, the local Irish Catholics also gathered around and told them what they thought of their ideas about voting and immigration and stuff like that. And the natives, to their credit, invited the Irish up on the stage, and they would have this debate about this. Nobody accepted. Rather, they just kept hooting and hollering at them and stuff like that. And then a guy named John O'Neill came down 2nd Street with a cart and horse with a bunch of dirt in the wagon, and he, bullied his way kind of into the lot, and people had to move out of the way because of the horse and stuff, and he dumps his load of dirt right in the middle of the meeting near the stage. And, it kind of pissed a lot of people off, Excuse my language. I'm not used to being in the pulpit.
Was that dirt, or was it like horse manure?
I heard dirt. I read dirt. Could have been horse manure. And when they asked him, what are you doing? They said the owner of the lot, he was paid by the owner of the lot to improve the lot. It was an unimproved lot. And, he could have avoided doing it, but, he was an agitator. He was arrested later for that, because he started, he's one of the instigators of the riots. And so there was other guys in the crowd, and they were all started laughing. So now temperature's really getting hot, and eventually, things started to be thrown and stuff like that, and the nativists got chased out of Kensington. They literally chased them out of the neighborhood. Nobody got hurt. Nobody was shot or anything like that. But they then dismantled the stage and had a big bonfire on the lot. And so that was the first day, not really a riot, but this is what precipitated the riot. So the nativists vowed that over the weekend they had these meetings, and they actually reconvened that meeting that night on the other side of Frankfurt Avenue in East Kensington, Second Ward, at one of the halls over there. And they said we would be back on Monday at 4 o'clock, and we will reconvene our meeting Monday, May 6th at 4 o'clock. And they did. Come Monday, you thought that, cooler heads would prevail. They decided not a good idea maybe, but they really felt offended, that their right to assemble, freedom of assembly, and freedom of speech was being trounced upon by these foreigners, is what they call them.